You're inside of the Africa Forum. It's Running African. My name is Kabu Ma'at Kiru. Gonna be working out with our broadcast assistant, Simone Brown Keys, this morning. So she's doubling up. She'll be taking your calls in her usual role as telephone operator, but she's also doubling up this morning as my broadcast assistant and studio assistant. At 9 minutes after 6 o'clock, we go through until 10 o'clock. That's when the big A comes in, would be Sunday Sunshine. Running African, reuniting the African family for development. Bearing witness, demanding change. Crafting an African-centered agenda for change and development. That's the mission. Blazing new paths towards Africa's rendezvous with destiny. It's the Africa Forum, Running African. We've come this long and thus far. And as Hannibal said, the elephants that brought us has since died. In front of us stand the Roman army or the Jamaican government. And it wants both our swords and our blood. It is such a critical struggle, for if we lose, we're lost forever. We will find a way, or we will make one. We've come this long and thus far, and the elephants that brought us have long died. In front of us stand the Jamaican government, and it wants both our swords and our blood. But it is such a critical struggle, because if we lose, we're lost forever. We will find a way, or we will make one. Uncle Johnson, life, prosperity, health to you. Indamin Adaru, good morning. Tala Estelin, greetings. Jambo Wote, how are you doing? It's the Africa Forum, seeking truth, learning from the past, absorbing the spirit of human possibilities, honoring my moral obligation to remember. 12 minutes after 6 o'clock. We're not Africans because we were born in Africa. We're Africans because Africa was born in us. Undeniably so. Not about to, can't, don't know how to trade off my intellectual identity to fit in. Don't know, not about to, and can't trade off my African identity in order to fit in. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning to you on the internet at iriafm.net. Good morning, good morning, good morning. In front of us stand the Roman army, and it wants both our swords and our blood. We're on the 107s, 107.1 all the way to 107.9. Welcome to you if you're following me on Twitter at Kabuma at Keru. Kabuma at Keru. We take your posts, we take your tweets. So I'm on Twitter K-A-B-U, Kabo, Ma'at, M-A-A-T, Keru, K-H-E-R-U, Kabo, Ma'at, Keru. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are on Facebook at Kabo Ma'at Keru Williams. That's where you'll find me. And you can send me an email at the old Babylon name, andrea.williams@irfm.net. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for choosing the 107s at irfm.net. And however you are listening to us this morning, on your Android apps, on your BlackBerry apps, on your iPhones, wherever you're listening to us this morning, on the continent of Africa, on the European continent, in Asia, in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, welcome to this space. It's an African space. Things are in this space as they appear to be. It's an African space. Breaking the cycle of mental control. It's a challenge, but we're up to it. It's a challenge, but we've got to do it. We have no choice. Good morning to you. Welcome to the space. Welcome to the black space. Welcome, welcome. As long as you're in this space, as long as you're in this space, know that you're invited to understand that it's an unfinished revolution that we're taking part in, but that our aim is to see it through, and that's no lie. Looking back, facing forward, the unfinished business of emancipation, the unfinished business of independence, the unfinished business of total liberation. As long as you're in this space, that's a critical understanding that you must have. As long as you're visiting this space, and if you're an active member, an active soldier on the battlefield, because it is a war. We know that it's war. It is change. It is revolutionary change. But it's an unfinished business. Our ancestors started this. It's not quite finished. They took it to the point they could have taken it to, and it's a brilliant and a beautiful place that they took it to. Now it's our turn to take the baton and finish the revolution. Looking back, understanding what they did, why they did, and how they did. Facing forward because we've got a job to finish. Searching for the source, looking back, remembering it, reintegrating it, using it to go forward. So we call to the space Chief Tachi, Chief Taki you call him, Chief Tachi, the great warrior prince. Out of Africa, he came. Fired plantations because he had to be free, but not just for himself. For his people, for Africa. So we call to the space the spirit of our great ancestor, Chief Tachi. We call to the space the spirit of our great ancestor, Chief Tachi. He was placed in St. Mary. And that's where he had to be. And we're calling to this space. We're calling to this space the spirit of our great ancestor Baba Sam Shah. Ancestor come. We're calling to this space the spirit of our great ancestor Baba Sam Shah. A true leader of the Emancipation Wars of 1831-32. We call to this space the spirit of our ancestor, Baba Sam Sharp, ancestor come. We have come this long and thus far. We call to this space the spirit of our great ancestor Hannibal. The elephants that brought us have long since died. The ships that brought a lot of our ancestors have long since rocked. In front of us, though, stand the governments of the Caribbean, the Jamaican government, and we are talking about whether it is any P, no matter which P, but they do stand in us and they want our swords, and more than anything else, they want our blood. We call to this space the spirit of our great ancestor Hannibal, because we're at this critical struggle, and if we lose, we're lost forever. But we must find a way. We will find a way, or we will make one. We call to this space our ancestor Hannibal. And we call to this space the spirit of our great ancestor mother, Queen Nanny. We call to this space the spirit of our great ancestor mother, Queen Nanny. Ancestor come. We invoke in this space the spirit of our great ancestor Ya Asantua. We invoke to this space the spirit of our great ancestor mother, Ya Asantua. Ancestor come. Ancestor come. 21 minutes after 6 o'clock, and we call and invoke into this space the spirit of our great ancestor, Nyabinghi. Queen Nyabinghi. We call and invoke into this space the spirit of our great ancestor, Queen Kitami. We call and invoke into this space the spirit of our great ancestor, Yaya Kimpavita. Ancestor come. Mother ancestors come. Looking back, facing forward. Knowing what army is in front of us. Knowing what they want, but knowing that it is a critical stage at which we stand and we must win, or else we're lost forever. It is a war. Good morning to you. Molimu Marcus Messiah Garvey declared August 31 a national holiday. Today is August 31. It marks the final day of the 94th anniversary of the first International Convention of the Black Peoples of the World, August 1 to August 31, 1920. This culminated with the drafting of the Declaration of Rights. Declaration 53 stating, we proclaim the 31st day of August of each year to be an international holiday to be observed by all black people. Happy International Day to you. Happy International Holiday to you. African people, wherever we are. Proclaimed thus and proclaimed so by Molimu Marcus Messiah Garvey. Today, of course, marking that final day of the 94th anniversary of the first International Convention of the Black Peoples of the World. August 1 to August 31, 1920. Molimu Marcus Messiah Garvey, in his dialogue, saying greatness has no color. You must never want to be a white man. You must be satisfied to be what nature made you and to excel in that respect so that the credit for your achievements will go to your race. There is a new effort, he says, to inspire all Africans to think this way so that in another 100 years, our children will not want to be white, but will be proud to be black. Welcome to the space. We've got an interesting program lined up for you. Now we've got the business out of the way. as we welcome the ancestors. As we welcome the ancestors, we know we've got the spirit of the ancestors. We've got an interesting program lined up for you this morning. Going to be talking about something quite interesting, and we'll tell you more about it in a little while. But just to say that today's program is entitled, and that is towards a discussion segment, You Have Come by Way of Undora, Ancient Queen Nyabinghi. Kagarama Kia Nyabinghi, the home of Nyabinghi. You have come by way of Undora, Ancient Queen Nyabinghi. Going to be talking about the Ancient Queen Nyabinghi. This morning we're going live to Uganda, from the region where the Ancient Queen Nyabinghi had one of her first manifestations many centuries ago. 4 manifestations in that region, and we say the 5th manifestation is right here in Jamaica. So we're going to be talking about the Ancient Queen. And joining us to talk about that will be our very special guest, Dr. Kihua Nkuba, and we're joining him live in Uganda this morning. Also this morning, Professor Hilary Beckles spoke in the British Parliament, the House of Commons, recently on the matter of reparations. Going to be taking that speech to you this morning, courtesy of Professor Varine Shepherd and Talking History, her program on Nationwide. So we're going to be taking that speech as delivered by Professor Hilary Beckles in the House of Commons earlier this year. I think it was in July, actually, but we'll get the correct date for you in just a moment. And in between all of that, we hope somewhere to take your telephone calls. We really hope that we'll be able to do that this morning. And we've got the music, we've got the conversation, and we've got the African-centeredness. Welcome to the space.
The essence of power is the ability to define someone's reality and have them live according to that definition as though it is a definition of their own choosing.
Sudan. Kagarama Kia Nyabinghi. Kagarama being the epicenter, being the home of Nyabinghi before the British came and made it and turned it and described it as witchcraft because they couldn't beat the power of the ancient goddess Nyabinghi. Declared an ordinance of witchcraft and drove Nyabinghi deeper underground and deep underground, and in some cases settling it in a way in Rwanda. Still practiced heavily in Uganda. And so when we talk about a people who have forgotten their God, and when we talk about a people who have forgotten their religion, when we talk about a people who have forgotten their name, and yes, I am going biblical, without apology. Because if we are ever to identify a group of people who have forgotten their names, if we're ever to identify a group of people who have forgotten their God, if we're ever to identify a group of people who do not know who they are, their race, their identity themselves, and if we're to be truthful about that, we'll take our heads from out of our butts and talking about those people from Europe. Alrighty then. So we really do want to go to the phone line to take your telephone calls. 974-5079, 5051, 5043, and 1-888-991-4152 are the numbers to call. Phone lines are now open. By the way, we understand that they have started the Ebola trials, the vaccine trials on humans. It was always going to get there. This is it, you know. You're called a conspiracy theorist if you begin at a very early stage to point to the conspiracy that you see, because it is a conspiracy. It is what it is. It's one of those things that things are not, and yet they appear to be. So the entire world is on Ebola watch. The entire world, because we are told that it is close to being a pandemic. And we saw two Americans, white, being taken from Africa in great fanfare. And so it wasn't until that point that I realized that there was a bigger picture here. Because that movie that we saw, that drama that unfolded when the doctor, the American health worker, was returned to America with Ebola, that was only for the shock value. They want you to see only what they want you to see. Have you seen the bodies of the many children who are dying in Palestine? Which one of the network news have you seen that on? Have you seen this looped over and over and over and over and over again? No, you haven't. You haven't. At times, it is so bad that you get glimpses of what might be happening, but you haven't seen the bodies of the many children who have been killed in Palestine, because they don't want you to see those. Remember that we saw the bodies of the children who were dying in Syria, because we were told then that those children were being killed by the Assad regime and that he was using chemical weapons. So you had to see the bodies. You had to see the children frothing at the mouth. You had to see them piled on top of each other dying, because that was for the shock value, for it to be okay to bomb Syria into nothingness. But we haven't seen the bodies of the children in Palestine yet. In the same way that the drama that unfolded with the health workers who returned to America with Ebola, you were meant to see that. Because there must be vaccine trials, and it must be so shocking to you and so scary to you that you do not want it in the region at all. And the drama that you saw unfolding with the health worker, remember, that also included the information that an experimental drug was going to be used on this doctor, and we all prayed for the white doctor. A lot of us prayed for the white doctor without praying for one of our African sister or brother who was dying from Ebola in Liberia and Guinea and wherever else they say that they were dying. But lots of prayer went up in the churches and everywhere across the world. Please save this man. Ain't nothing wrong with praying for one. What does it take? How many white people, how many Europeans have to die? Or how many Africans have to die to value the life of one white person? It is a question we must ask. We must ask ourselves that. As Africans, we must ask ourselves that, because the answer doesn't even matter. The question is more important. So answer in any way you want to, or do not answer. But the question is very important. How many? So there's a vaccine trial. So this is the irony of ironies, because this is a Cold War for vaccine trials, and we'll soon get to the bottom of it, in terms of why this big rush on the vaccines. But so the trials are happening. We have to follow the money, and I've been doing that. I've been doing my research to see who owns the company, ZMAC and so on. And this is very interesting so far, but because we're not finished the research, I'm not going to be talking about it. But I'll talk about it once I've completed that. But so the vaccines are now the entire world is ready and primed for the vaccines to be tried on humans. And who better to try these vaccines on than the non-humans, the Africans, continental Africans? It is not far-fetched. Depo-Provera, what do you call it? The drug when you don't want to have children. Anyway, Depo-Provera. That drug, taken by so many women all across the world today, was an experimental drug tested and tried on human beings. And that drug was tested and tried on human beings for almost a decade before any of those women who the drug was being tested on knew about it. But here is a catch to that. Because even though I said for almost a decade before the women knew, even to this day, majority, probably 99.9% of the women who the drug was tested on, even to this day, do not know. Who are those women? Those women are Jamaican women. Depo-Provera was tested on women in Jamaica for decades. And even to this day, these women still do not know. Even to this day, majority of Jamaicans still do not know. Even to this day, the only space in which that has been said and continues to be said is this space. This very space. The Africa Forum. And it's not as if the information is hidden. So maybe we need to ask a question and not to give the answer. Because we do feel that the questions are more important than the answers. In any case, so to go back to Ebola. So we understand that now they're testing the drug, ZMac and the other drugs, on Africans. Human testing has begun. That's an interesting situation. The world is primed and ready for the drug to be tested on Africans. Anybody but us. Even the Africans in the diaspora are saying that, Yeah, test it. Test it. Do you know what it means to test an experimental drug on someone? Do you know what it means? Do you know how many people could be crippled, maimed, die of cancer, on all kinds of different things while this testing is going on? There are reasons why countries have laws that drugs are not to be tested on humans. A lot of ethical issues surrounding the Ebola outbreak and the management of the outbreak. Experimental treatment? Really? On the continent of Africa? Why? First, the WHO tells us it's close to a pandemic, and then we hear about these drugs. But the joke about these drugs, is that so we have a drug coming out of America. We have Russia immediately coming to the table and saying, but we do have a drug. And since you're testing on humans, let's get in there. So you have Russia. And then just this weekend, China announced that they too have developed a drug, but China is already in Africa. And China did say they ain't going nowhere. Remember? When everybody packed up and left, the epicenter, as they called it, of the Ebola outbreak, China said, we're not moving. Because China knew. And China has now come out just this weekend to say, hey, you guys, we too have a drug, and you've got Africans. Let's test this thing. Clinical trials, which should be happening, the testing to make sure a drug can do what it is being developed to do. This testing usually happens, in many different ways. Sometimes they test them on animals, and sometimes they really do use humans as guinea pigs, and it's always controversial. But now it's right out in the open, right out, no secret. So now we find that the gates are open wide for China and Russia and Germany and America to test this experimental drug on Africans. Will it do more harm than good? The question to me is more important than the answer, because nobody can answer that. Will it do more harm than good? And how many generations will have to pay for this? Africans have been dealing with all kinds of poverty diseases, because of the poverty that has been unleashed on it by the West. The poverty of the politics of disease is something that we have to talk about. Pathologies of power, and Paul Farmer writes about that in looking at Haiti. So we're seeing now that these drugs are being tested on increasing larger numbers of people. You know, there are questions about compassionate use of experimental drugs, but we still have many, many questions about the testing. And if you notice that the Ebola outbreak is centered in resource poor, and deliberately I say that, resource poor countries. So the outbreak is being used, and I say this without apology, that the outbreak is being used as an unofficial clinical trial. And the question is, after the clinical trial, after the trial, what are the side effects of these drugs? Who knows? They're working out the side effects of these drugs on Africans right now. You know that, don't you? And we sit back and buy into their lies. But they're working out the side effects of these drugs on Africans right now. That's not how it works. It's unethical. It's not right. That's not how it works. And the question we have to ask is that if there's another outbreak, will these governments, once they have completed their clinical trials on Africans and they know the side effects, they know who will die and who will not die, the question is, once they've finished the clinical trials, what next? If there's another outbreak, will the drug be available to the resource poor countries who, by the way, are not usually able to afford these drugs once they are tested on them? So I don't know about you, but I think there's something unethical about this. It is unfair to use people, to test drugs, experimental drugs, on entire populations. How do you do that? How do you do that? There is a movie called The Constant Gardener. The Constant Gardener. And whether you have it or you don't have it, you know, there are ways to get it. Whether you can download it, I don't know how that works. I don't do anything illegal or piracy-wise. But The Constant Gardener, every African in the diaspora and on the continent of Africa should watch that movie today. And then let's talk about it again. Let's talk about Ebola. The Constant Gardener. Yes, watch it and let us talk about it. Russia has moved to Guinea. You know, Russia has taken a mobile lab because remember, America is already there. China ain't going nowhere. And Russia says they too have developed a drug. So you know what they did? They have now moved into the Ebola-infested pandemic with a mobile clinic, a mobile lab, saying that they are treating Africans with vaccine that they developed. Yeah, it's Russia's Vector State Research Center of Urology and Biotechnology. They're there with a mobile lab. They had to get there fast. They couldn't even get a building because human testers are here. Galore. Africans for kill. Literally for kill. So Russia has moved in with a mobile lab, and we are thankful. And we're praying in our churches and saying, thank God they found a vaccine. And wow, thank God they saved that white man. Wasn't that great? I'm just saying that we must answer questions. And where are the bioethicists? Where are the bioethicists? We must get one on this program. We have a very good one here in Jamaica. A former sex-wise doctor. We're going to get him on. is 1-888-991-415. Calling from overseas, the country code is 876 because we're getting quite a few emails and Facebook messages asking about those numbers. So it's 876, the country code for Jamaica. So 974-5079 and 974-5051, 974-5043 and 1-888-991-4152. Those are the numbers to call. Taking your telephone calls. Just about running African.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, greetings, my brother. How are you?
I am blessed to be alive this morning.
Okay, great.
Right. First time on the program in almost 20 years, I'm listening to you.
Yes?
Yeah, you know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening.
In light of the Maria Dean saga,
yes,
could I get to just read a few lines that I've written as a poem?
All right, I haven't seen it, and you didn't call me beforehand, so I don't know what you're going to read.
Well, the contents are clean. I
right.
Sure, yeah.
But I want you to hang up and read back to Simone Brown Keys so that before we can take you on air, all right?
Oh, okay.
All right, thanks. Wherever we are as black people, our conditions are the same. Hotep?
Hotep.
Yes, greetings, my brother. Go ahead.
Kristen, good morning.
Give thanks.
Yeah. On the Ebola.
Yes.
There's a book called Emerging Viruses.
Yes.
Ebola.
Yes, I know it.
It was written by Dr. Leonard Horowitz.
Mm-hmm. I do know it, and I've interviewed him on that book many, many times.
Oh, good.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, you understand what's going on.
Of course, yes, and that is why we're coaching it in the context of ethics, because it's a place to start. But yes, I do understand, and that's why we're talking about the politics of disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a good book to point out to our listeners to get their hands on, Emerging Viruses by Leonard Horowitz.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just a little thing, because in 1968, they created both diseases. AIDS.
Yes.
And if people read, they'll understand a lot more what's going on.
Of course.
There's another book called The Unseen Hand.
That one I don't know.
Okay. I don't have the order for you, but it's called The Unseen Hand.
Okay.
And that correlates with that book. To tell you what's going on with all these societies, the secret societies. So what's going on, a lot of it is population control, what's the wealth, and who needs to get to the wealth.
And it's interesting, it's Africa that has the wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as the Western world is concerned, they have the wealth. The United States alone will use 25% of that wealth. And if you put Europe and the rest of them together, they need a lot of the wealth. And to get to the wealth, you got to get to the people to make them beg you to save them. In doing so, you make a deal and you take the wealth.
With all the knowledge we have and with what we know, how come we're still being oppressed?
Because a lot of us don't know and we don't get together with each other. Because we are busy wanting to show off on each other. See, we have been deprived so long from the basic things that when we get something we show off more than anything. Look at the United States. African Americans spend more money than any other set of people as a group in the United States. But they're one of the least, one of the people who are the most kept down.
Yes, so and they do, and I know, like, for example, in England, we have a similar, Africans and black people do have a similar spending power, but we buy our yams and our cocoa and our dashins from the Indian and the Pakistani and so on.
So
but thank you for, yes.
And until we start, we get so, it gets to the point where we're back have to be against the wall.
Yes.
For you to really do what you're supposed to do. So when you get in the revolutions, when, boy, you can't do no better. You have to fight.
We have to deal, I think also we have to deal with it as a psychological problem and deal with the psychic trauma. Because part of our behavior has to do with ongoing psychic trauma that we haven't yet faced or dealt with.
And you know what's bad? In the 60s, there was one generation who had causes to fight for. These generations now have no cause, and you can't even tell them so they're black.
Right. So, and where did we? And that's why Professor Obati Shaka book is critical. The integration trap, the generation gap, and we're going to be giving away one of those hopefully today. But it's important to read that, because what he does is to point out what's responsible to a large extent for this generation gap, and he talks about the integration trap. But thanks, my brother.
Yeah, man. When we are responsible, doesn't make quick sense. We, the generation of the 60s, are responsible because we went to primary school. There's a little thing in Jamaica here. But your kid can't go primary school no more. You have to go prep school because you have to speak a certain way.
We have to deal with... No, but people are not sending their children to prep school because they have to speak a certain way. People are making a choice between a classroom of 75 children and a classroom of 15 children.
But,
we have a lot to do until about 7:30 when we go to Uganda. 974-5079, 5051, 5043, and 1-888-991-4152. Seems like it was just yesterday we were writing poetry about Abner Louima, and writing poetry about Amadou Diallo, and writing poetry about Trayvon Martin, because we do write and sing a lot about our black boys, you know, when they are violently and viciously killed. And here we are now writing and singing about Maria Dean. Well, now we're going to realize that it's not about the writing and the singing. The time for the tom-toms are over. Amilcar Cabral says that when it gets to this point, there's nothing to do but to fight back. As we go back to the phone lines, Hotep?
Hello?
Yes, my brother, go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hotep to you.
I would like to comment a little bit on some of what you're saying in regards to the Ebola drug. The drug was first used on an American. The doctor who...
That's exactly what I said, though, you know.
Yeah. No, but there's a section of your comment that would serve to suggest that it is Africans that this is being used then as Africans are being...
Well, before you go any further, just bear this one thing in mind that I'm about to say. To see something one way is not to see it another way. So first of all, that please understand that. And then secondly, one of the things, the first I premised, the premise that I based the conversation on was that it had to be this way. The drama that unfolded with the American who came back, over television cameras were invited to take that picture. And then we were told that this person was given an experimental drug, and that drug worked, and we thank God for it. Remember, that's what I said. So that was part of the bigger picture, because if that worked on one American, but it is still in its experimental state, and by the way, that American was given the drug in Africa, you know, because America...
And it helped?
No, hang on. It is still do you understand about testing vaccines?
To a certain degree.
Right, because there's a whole lot more involved than just giving it to one person, and it helped. So that the premise is that, so it helped this one person. Where do you now test it for efficacy? How do you now test it to make sure that it does what it says it can do? Because if it works on just one, it's a fluke. You can't sell it that way. It will not be approved that way. It has to be tested for over a certain amount of time, whether it's a year or 2 years or 3 years. Some testing go on for very long, and it has to be tested on a certain amount of subjects. And where do you find that many subjects, and how do you test them for so long?
Well, for what it works, it would mean that is the human being that have such issue. Really? It would be required to be tested on, logically.
Right, and exactly, that's it. So you're making my point. And the human beings, we're told, are in Africa.
Yes, but that's where the problem is.
What's the problem?
Predators don't like the Africa versus or the black versus the white argument. I think that's where my contention is.
But my brother, I'm not talking black versus white. I'm talking about ethics. I'm talking about medical ethics. There's look here, there's something, it doesn't matter how you coach it. It doesn't matter how but if you want to see something one way is not to see it another way, and I'm also guilty of that. And that is why I do not make this a racist statement. I make this a statement of medical ethics. There is something ethically wrong with testing experimental drugs on a whole slew of people without as a matter of fact, it's just ethically wrong on testing experimental drugs on humans like that. There's something wrong.
The drug is not being tested on human beings without Ebola.
My brother, we could go on for a very, very long time on this. And the point you're making is that there's nothing wrong with the testing of the drugs on Africans.
No,
That's what I'm saying. You are promoting the drug being tested on.
Do you know the name? Do you know the name of this program?
Run in Africa.
It's called the Africa Forum.
Yes, but what I'm saying.
Yes.
So there's a sense of bias.
Do you know what the vision of this program is?
To promote Africa?
No, to reunite the African family for development.
Yeah, but development means that what? We must be racist or we must be biased?
I'm very happy that you're listening.
Yes, but then
yes.
I'm listening because I have an issue. Also, this is
you're listening because you have an issue?
Yeah, no, I'm listening because I want to hear what you are this show is really promoting. And you're saying it's promoting development of Africans. Rastafarians also share this kind of it's the same kind of attitude that Rastafarians carry.
And what attitude? What attitude is that?
It's controversial, and the arguments are controversial, and it lacks a lot of basis for a good conclusion.
So let me get your point of view on the vaccines. Your point of view on the testing of the vaccines. Let me hear what you think.
My point of view on the vaccine is that the World Health Organization did make it quite clear that it has never ever been used before on human beings.
Yes.
And the first person to be tested with it was this American doctor who was actually in Africa helping Africans. In fact, he did not even go there for the purpose of Ebola issues.
No.
So
he was helping Africans.
Yes.
Yes.
And not have anything to do with any Ebola.
Yes.
Ebola came up. And I'm asking, remember, what's your point of view on the vaccine trials that are now taking place in Africa? What's your perspective? It is okay. All right. Well, let us. Remember.
No, but I don't have to. My brother, your point is well taken. I don't have to recall. No, hang on there. Thank you very much. I've given you enough. Right. Your point of, points of views can contend. African point of views. It's an African space. And if you're in an African space, you expect that it's going to be African-centered. But what I say to my brother, the young brother, and he sounds pretty useful, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, is to probably just do a bit more reading on medical ethics and the ethics regarding the testing of experimental drugs on human beings, and also vaccine trials on human beings. All right. Let's take another call, 974-5079, 5051, 5043. And 18889. You wanted to read a poem regarding Mario Dean Everton?
Yes, Babu.
All right, go right ahead.
All right. It's entitled, It Really Dread. It really dread. For one split tail, them lock him in a jail. Later denied bail. Beaten so badly till him end up dead. It dread. What a gruesome, unforgettable scene when they took the life of poor Mario Dean. With no one to show mercy, not a shoulder to lean, them wipe him out clean. Angry cry of protesters has sparked a national debate. Police points the finger of blame to others just to save face. Wow, you're not even safe in the custody of the state? While the world is making millions from cannabis, man in Jamaica dead for this. Now see it, ya. You never know it would have reached, ya. This has attracted international media. The echoes of justice has caused ripple effect. But how can I forget the Constance King murder for Ghana Barrett? What a thing when police severely battered Rodney King. And would it be a cardinal sin not to mention Zimmerman who killed the unharmed Trayvon Martin? Oh yes, let this one sift through your soul. Because if you're strong, mighty and bold, you can also be killed like Eric Gardner by a police chokehold. But stand your ground and make a sound for Michael Brown. Justice is a governmental vehicle used to overrun the vulnerability of its people. Justice for one. Will it be justice for all? It dread. It really dread.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you very much.
Yes,
really dread. just listening to the brother reading that poem and calling the names, recalling those who have been violently and viciously killed by the state, whether it's here or the United States or wherever else that it happens. We see it happening on the continent of Europe a lot also. Is that, and we go back to the point, is that our condition in the African diaspora, wherever we are, is similar. We're experiencing the very same things. And so while we look at our issues locally, nationally, we have to begin to connect the dots. It is in that connection that I think we're going to see some kind of liberation of ourselves. It's a borderless situation now. We talk about globalization. We're the ones who are being globalized, by the way. But even in that process, because our condition remains the same wherever we are, bottom of the ladder, youths criminalized before they begin to speak. There's an expectation that our black boys are criminals, and I use that word, expectation, because it is what it is. So that they're criminalized when they're seen on the corner sitting on a wall. They're criminalized when they're wearing certain kinds of clothes. They're criminalized when they're just walking down the road. They're criminalized when they turn up for a job, because the mindset, even of their own, looking like them, is that we have come through a process of psychic violence to hate our offspring and to distrust our offspring, and so to criminalize our offspring. So that when our young boys especially wear their black skins outside of our homes, as soon as they go through our front doors, in the minds and the eyes of even the society that looks like them, they are criminals, wherever we are across the world. What brought us to this place? And how do we begin to change this? We can shout as loud as we want to. We can talk as loud as we want to. Our brother Amilcar Cabral says when he gets to this stage, it's not the shouting, it's not the talking. We can't shout against imperialism. We can't shout against neocolonialism. It hasn't worked. It is the networking of ourselves, the reunification of ourselves, and in that reunification and networking, the power that comes from the numbers of all who we are. But how to do that? So Mario Dean, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, and all the other black boys who have been killed. Abner Louima, what happened with him? Amadou Diallo, remember him? Reaching for his wallet. 40 bullets, And we have a few of these every year. The lynching continues. Let me get a few more in. 974-5079, 5051, 5043. And I said to my brother who called earlier, the young man, that one of the things that I'd like him to go and look at and to read is the Tuskegee experiment, the syphilis given to black people in the United States deliberately by the United States government so that they too could try a vaccine. The U.S. government has since paid reparations to the families. As we go to the phone lines, hello, caller. Hotep, Garnet.
I was just looking along the Ebola trail,
Yes.
And noticing how if you follow that trail, it's a very, very, very mineral-rich trail,
Of course it is. Especially Guinea.
Yeah. The whole of them, because Sierra Leone have diamonds.
Yes.
And Liberia, whole heap of iron ore.
And Guinea has oil.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And if you notice the straight up on the curve, them way it takes very, very, very mineral rich trail.
And that and for us, you know, that's why I keep saying that the questions are even more important to us than the answers. We must ask the questions. Critical thinking is important, you know. We can't just accept everything that is being told to us and given to us because it is coming from the West and it is coming from sources that we have come to regard as being credible sources. For example, the WHO. We don't have time to talk about the WHO, but you know, there's just too much information out there about big pharmaceuticals and vaccine trials across the world that for us not to at least ask the question, and I'm asking the question of ethics. I'm starting with ethics. I'm not even going on Saturday. I know a lot about the poverty of disease, but I'm just starting with ethics.
Yeah, but something I always say to Mota, and I find I have to say it to you now, that the enemies of programs like these, they always send on a caller like that and hear how no get caught now. Spend too much time with them and argue where there is a saying, you know, a fool convinced against his will remain a fool still, especially when the fool is a deliberate fool.
Well, I personally like callers like that. You see, that's the thing. The difference with us then in the thinking is that when you are in a space like this, your own views need to be interrogated in your own space. And so when a caller calls in with a different view, it gives you a chance to interrogate your views. I mean, I think
spend the rest of the program doing that.
But I haven't spent the rest of the program doing that. He's long gone.
Yeah.
Right, but I had to hear his view, and it's only fair that we do that, to hear the opposing view, to make ourselves better, to sharpen the points we're making. Iron sharpeneth iron, you know. And we're not. If we all agree, then what are we? If we all agree, then we can't achieve anything, you know.
We all agree, but some of them view that. From them start, you know where them are come from.
No, but as a moderator who invites persons into her space to call, I opened the phone lines, didn't I? And I invited people to call in. So no, to me, we need to give space and to give room to the opposing views. I like the opposing views. I like to get the opposing views, and I thank those who agree. But I like to hear the opposing views. Yes,
agree, you know, but don't spend too much time and contaminate.
Well, I've spent more time with you now than I spent with him.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, one last thing about Michael Brown.
Yes.
Michael Brown was a very bright youth, you know, who was supposed to start college the Monday morning after the incident. That looked funny to me too, you know?
Yeah, what is the solution to our this particular vexing problem that affects the race wherever we are? Our young boys are continually gunned down by themselves in some cases, and in a lot of cases by the state, police officers.
That we have to know and believe in our things, you know, because part of the problem and part of the trap is we believe in a freedom things more than how we believe in our own self. The trappings and the bling and all the other things.
So how do we break that cycle of mental control? Because obviously it is a mental control. It's a battle for the mind, as many persons have said in this time. This is where we are now, a fight for the minds. How do we begin to change the thinking?
By step back into our Marcus Garvey and His Imperial Majesty and know those two people for who they are and know that they already set the blueprint more than 100 years ago. They have already written the blueprint by which we must live today.
Mm-hmm. And how do we get that information to our young people?
Well, me always suggest that thing, but but you see comic, you see the thing when name comic, cause plenty youth not like the big tough reading. So I think when name comic, more people know about Europe and World War II through comic.
These younger generation young people we're talking about now, they're reading from their phones and from their tablets and so on. How do you get that there?
It's funny.
All right.
The comic funny.
All right. One solution. Thank you very much, Garnet.
Yeah.
All right. You're inside of the Africa Forum. It's Running African, and we're taking a quick break. We'll be right back. We can't take any more calls for this morning, at least for right now. Hopefully, later on in the morning, we'll take some more of your calls. Sorry for those persons who are still holding, but call us back later, and we'll take your calls.
Well, go on and Miss Hazel shop. I flock everybody. I flock to get them Royals wheat crackers. You know, eat. Let me taste it now. I buy your one.
Homemade Royals wheat crackers. Hungry for more? The time by Homemade Royals wheat crackers is...
Now 7:30, and we want to go to Uganda to speak with our very special guest in this segment of the program. And we're talking about Dr. Kihura in Cuba. I want to talk now about Queen Nyabinghi. You have come by way of Undora, ancient Queen Nyabinghi, Kagarama Kia Nyabinghi, the home of Nyabinghi. We were talking earlier about the various manifestations of Nyabinghi, and all the literature talks about at least four manifestations, for different periods then of the origin of Nyabinghi as it relates to the origin of Queen Nyabinghi and the worship of the goddess Nyabinghi. But I'm adding a fifth, but I don't see a lot written in terms of a literature, the academic literature in particular, about the Jamaican manifestation, which is Nyabinghi here in Jamaica. So that's something we hope to pick up at a later date. But want to go to the phone lines? Standing by to speak with my very special guest, Dr. Kihura in Cuba. I was talking about Amilcar Cabral as we wait for Dr. in Cuba earlier, and he talked about shouting against imperialism. So I found the exact quote. He says, "We're not going to eliminate imperialism by shouting insults against it. For us, the best or worst shout against imperialism, whatever its form, is to take up arms and fight." My brother, my father, Nyabinghi of my father, be with you. You have come by way of Undora, and of course the Nduga. Utunganzizi, son of Gahaya, son of Murari, Bashambo. You have come by way of Undora, and of course the Nduga. All right, trying to understand a bit more about the ancient goddess. And standing by to speak with him. All right, so here we are on the phone lines, live from Uganda. Dr. Kihura in Cuba, my very special guest, who has written extensively about the ancient Nyabinghi. Dr. in Cuba, thank you very much for joining us live from Uganda.
Thank you very much. It is indeed my pleasure to be speaking from the foothills of the mountains of the moon to my brothers and sisters in an island they call Jamaica, and also to be able to deliberate with you on the ancient wisdom of Nyabinghi and who the person was I'd be quite happy to express what I know around you.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for the work and the research that you've done in this area. I said earlier that one of the manifestations of Nyabinghi is right here in Jamaica, and it's a conversation that we're going to have later on. But just to start from there, that because of the Nyabinghi here in Jamaica, the Rastafarian group identifying as Nyabinghi, Jamaicans know the name Nyabinghi. Not a whole lot, though, is known, even among some Rastafarians, about Nyabinghi. But in what region of Africa did Nyabinghi originate?
You call it Nyabinghi, we call it Nyabinghi. It is written the same way. It is pronounced Nyabinghi in this region, and you pronounce it Nyabinghi, which is, I suppose, an Americanized version, of it.
Yes.
But it comes from the area of the Great Lakes. The area of the Great Lakes being Lake Narbale, which the English called Victoria after the wicked queen. There is Lake Choga. There is, Lake Mitanzige, which the English called Albert. There's Lake Amin, Lake Katwe, the Third Lake, River Kagera, River Nile. So, it was this area that was called the inter-crossing region, or the region between the lakes. And it covers the countries that are present day: Uganda, Kenya, Eastern Kenya, Tanzania, and Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo. So that was the area that Nyabinghi would have ruled at the time of the great empire of the Bachezi. So presently that is the area that is known as the Great Lakes. In ancient time, it also was part of ancient Egypt and part of ancient Ethiopia.
All right, so that is really a massive area on the continent of Africa. So let us talk a little bit about Nyabinghi herself. Nyabinghi, of course, a woman, a female, but referred to, and help us to understand that, was Nyabinghi a goddess, a queen, a physical person, a manifestation in different times? Who was or what was Nyabinghi?
She was indeed a physical person that ruled a vast area of the area that I have mentioned. We would put her around maybe something like 600 BC. However, there are several manifestations of Nyabinghi. She exercised so much influence that other people who came after her and some of her followers kept calling themselves Nyabinghi. Now, after her disappearance, she's worshipped as a god or as a spirit because of her contribution that was able to appear and disappear. But if I was to give you a background, it happens that, when the ancient Egyptians were chased out of Egypt by the Assyrians, they moved down south following the Nile. And then they established a kingdom in this part of the world known as the Bachezi Empire, or the Chezi, or the people of the moon. Now, they ruled this area for, something like close to 500 years, and, then they disappear. And the disappearance was also, a mystery, but, there was a soothsayer or a sage, whom they called to interpret why things were not going well for this particular dynasty. And what had happened was every time they'd slaughter a cow or a chicken, they'd find the intestines in the head. So this sage says to them, the reason you find intestines in the head is because you are ruling with your stomach, you are not ruling with your brain. And it is also time for you to depart and leave this land in the hands of other people. So now, one of the rulers of these Bachezi, or these ancient Egyptians, had gone to the lake, which is what you call Lake Victoria now, but at the time, it's called Lake Narbale or Lake Nyanza. And that was because his wife had been pregnant for 13 years. And she found that very strange, and he found that very strange, and he wanted to know what he could do. So this man was called Ntabingwa. Ntabingwa meaning Nyawera. So Ntabingwa, the son of Nyawera. And when he goes to the island to look for an explanation from the mother-in-law, he takes his wife with him, and the wife delivers there a child, and this and he delivers in the 13th year, the 13th hour, on the 13th day to this child. And when the child is born, he's holding a gold bracelet in one hand and seedlings in another, seeds, grain in another.
So let me interrupt. She was holding, the child was holding what? A bracelet in one hand?
She was holding a copper bracelet in one hand.
Yes.
And then she was holding grain, seeds of grain in another.
Oh, grain, yes.
And this child was called Nyamale. Nyamale, which means the finisher, one who finishes everything. But it is this child whose name was changed afterwards to become Nyabinghi, because she introduced so many things in the region, so that people said Nyabinghi, which means of many, one who introduces many things. And my work and my book, The 13 Stations of Nyabinghi, deals specifically with the things that this particular warrior or ruler of this vast area introduced. That's why I call it the 13 Stations of Nyabinghi. But she picked the name. Nyabinghi was a name that was given to her because of her contribution to most of the things that she introduced in the region. But if you still want to know about the mystery of how she grows up and what happened to her, I can still tell you.
All right, and I still want to know about that. It's an interesting information there about her birth, which I find, this is one that I hadn't seen in the narrative before, but we do understand that the name Nyabinghi means that she who brings bounty, which is what we have said here, even in this space, that the name Nyabinghi actually means death to black and white down pressers or oppressors. But you're saying that, no, at birth, her name meant she who brings bounty, something to that effect.
Yes, when she was born, she was named the finisher, one who finishes everything, Nyamari. And then she is named Nyabinghi because she introduces many things. Part of what she introduces incense and pepper. She introduces riddles. She introduces singing. She introduces herbalism. She introduces calabash of darkness in warfare, where you'd be fighting an army and then they throw a calabash of darkness so you can't see the other army. She introduces magic. She introduces defense. She introduces honey, clothes making, goldsmithing, and eventually she disappears in the underworld and introduces the kingdom of the underworld. And that kingdom of the underworld, she puts it in the hand of another king who was called Nyamionga, so that you'd have one kingdom above and another kingdom below. And this happened because in her last battle, she fought a battle which she couldn't win, of the eternal kingdom of Buheju. And the people fought her for over 13 years, and she couldn't win. And eventually she decided that let us dig a tunnel and create a city and the underworld, and that's how she ends. She ends disappearing in the city in the underworld.
And I see you've placed her is it 1600 BC? What BC did you say? Give us a time frame again.
But then what happened was that her influence becomes very significant, because she had like 13 warrior women, very famous, very fierce. So when she goes underwards, some of the people that were with her carve out different kingdoms. They carve out the kingdom of Ankore, the kingdom of Bunyoro, the kingdom of Mpororo, the kingdom of Rwanda, and some of the later versions of Nyabinghi depict some of these women, like one of them, Chitani Chanyawera, Muhumuza of Rwanda, and these were also very famous people in their own right, but they survived and thrived on the knowledge and influence and the spiritualism of Nyabinghi. Nyabinghi eventually becomes a goddess. She becomes this famous, powerful spirit that is able to appear and disappear, that is able to interfere in people's lives and dictate their destiny, but mainly for their own, defense and for their own, self-preservation. Because Nyabinghi really was about, self-preservation. She wanted to bring everybody under one, kingdom and one administration. And if I tell you, there was, in her last appearance, she goes to a sage, somebody who sees in a future, and the oracle, or the oracle of Chandago. And this oracle tells her what is going to happen in the next, 600 or 900 years. And the words that they said are going to happen in the next 900 years are the things that are happening to us now. So around Uganda, people who know Nyabinghi, everything they see, they know that was given to Nyabinghi in the oracle of Chandago. And if you want, I could tell you some of the things that he said.
Could you do that for us, please? And my brother, Dr. Nkumba, I'm going to ask you to speak just a little bit slower. This information we're really absorbing, and I know, and try to get as much right. So just a little.
Very excited. So,
yes.
I'm going to speak slower. Because I don't know how much time we have, and I wanted to give you as much information. So I slow down.
Yes. All right. Go ahead. Yes.
This was what was happening. This is in the last phase of Nyabinghi's, war before she disappears in the city in the underworld, or in the kingdom that she creates underneath this one. She goes to an oracle, and this is known as the oracle of Chandago. And she's fighting, and she wants to know what would happen if she was to leave this earth and go somewhere else. What would happen to the world? And this woman says to her, in a period not this one, you shall see a stranger with no lips, with no buttocks, whose eyes are like those of a cat, and whose tongue is divided into 17 short gasps. And they say, his hair, that is the hair of the stranger, is like that of a dog. His smell like that of a snake or a goat. He will come hiding in sorghum fields. Sorghum is a grain. Yeah. And you shall pretend like he is your child. He shall offer you some strange things, but what you deny him, he shall steal. And then she continues, in a period not this one, his children will rule over you. Yes. For some of us who interpret the rule of the Europeans, that's why we believe that the 900 years have almost elapsed, so that the rule of these people is coming to an end. But he continued and said that the headrest that has taken wine for a tribute will itself receive them, meaning in ancient time, this kingdom that Nyabinghi ruled, people would be coming to bring tributes, other kingdoms or other foreign powers. But now it is our powers or our kingdom or our country that takes tributes elsewhere. Something similar to what we've heard as African leaders going to meet Obama. I mean, how do you get 50 heads of state going to meet one man? If Obama wanted to meet African heads of state, he should have found them in Africa. But these are all things that we say were predicted by this oracle to Nyabinghi. And he says, you shall see people walking in the sky without holding on to anything. A rope will tie the whole world, and it will squeeze it in a monstrous hand. A fox will beat the drum, and the wolf will come dancing. And continues in a period not this one, men without yesterday will rule those with no tomorrow. And the women without last year will rule those who have no future. There will be men without faces, women without buttocks, with their buttocks exposed. There will be people who become frogs. There will be young who turn into snakes. Hunters will disappear, and homes will become forests. The foolish will become the king, and the wisdom will go away like the river that flows from a lake. So, there was these predictions that were done to Nyabinghi to tell her what would happen. Yes. And most of these things happened in this region. And that also helped to increase when people started seeing white people, because the oracle had predicted to Nyabinghi that we shall be ruled by people whose skin is like that of the young pig. So people said, here they have come. It was predicted that people who have, no lips, who have no buttocks, and whose skin is like that of the young pigs, and speak with muffled tongues, that they have come. So most of what was predicted have come, and that helped also spread the cults and the belief and the power of the spirit of Nyabinghi.
And did this, when some of these, as predicted by the prophecies from the oracle Nyabinghi, did this result in a kind of a resistance within those who know? Because by this time, Nyabinghi... Say that again?
Because the oracle had predicted that men who live near water, and those who live near on top of the hills, and those who live in a desert, that they will combine and remove those people who would have upset the order or have, put their own power over this region. So most of the time when there has been resistance, it has been people who live near rivers or those who live near water. And, so the belief in Nyabinghi and the African people's ability to fight off invaders was predicted a long time ago. And it was predicted that it would happen and that it would end. And, when I was thinking about this interview, I was thinking of men who live near water and women who live near water. And what other men live near water, like the brothers and sisters in Jamaica and in Trinidad and Tobago and in St. Lucia and St. Vincent, in Grenada, who have, shown us the spirit of resistance. And maybe the time has come, that men who live near water and us who live on the mountains of the moon can combine and, throw away the yoke of this, European resistance.
I certainly think that there is something in that. So let us talk about Nyabinghi as a resistance movement over time, but also Nyabinghi as Nyabinghi herself as a liberator. That aspect of Nyabinghi.
Nyabinghi was a unifier. He found all this, he found an empire that had disintegrated because the owners had left it. And there was nobody who was exercising a firm grip to bring order, to bring administration, to bring things that sustain life. And that's what she did. Most of the wars that she fought was wars to bring harmony and to bring peace. In fact, when she was born, right at the beginning, when she was in the lake with her father, and her father was teaching her how to fish, when her father would get fish and put it in a canoe, Nyabinghi would get the fish and throw it back in the water. And at one time, her father, got angry with her and said, "What are you doing?" And then Nyabinghi, without fish in the water, you wouldn't be in the water because you have come to water to look for fish. So there has to be some form of harmony. She's also marooned on an island, which was called an island of water. And on this island, this is where she finds 70 serpents. And these serpents said that they were guarding the spirit of the souls of the ancient rulers. And it is interesting when you read the work of Albert Churchward, Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, that you find that the souls of ancient Egyptians and the ancient Mexican rulers would come to rest in this lake that we call Lake Nyanza. So eventually, when she teaches people the art of warfare, the art of food, ability to grow food and store grain and have granaries that they would dig holes in the ground, like giant holes. Then they put leaves, and then they put grain and cover it and put a tree. And then they would travel vast distances. After 10, 20 years, the grain would still be in the ground. So this would enable them to sustain a war. The art of gold smelting and iron making that enabled them to get implements of war. So Nyabinghi becomes not only a reparator, but he also set up, a wisdom system that survives up to today. Without Africa's ability to grow food and store grain, without this region's ability to grow food and store grain, we would not be anywhere. That is why you've had other parts of Africa have expanded, but you have not had Uganda or Tanzania or Kenya or Eastern Kenya suffering from famine but you have not had Uganda or Tanzania or Kenya or Eastern Kenya suffering from famine because farming and agriculture was one of the main stations of Nyabinghi. She spread seeds. She had thousands and thousands of seeds and educated people to keep seedlings, to keep your own seedlings in your house. At the time when I was born, I am about 45 now, but when I was born, every home you'd go to, in the sitting room, where there would be seedlings for grain, millet, sorghum, maize, tomatoes, they would be kept. And that was right from the period of Nyabinghi, because Nyabinghi demanded that all her followers must keep seedlings so that they don't miss seasons in planting, and also introduced irrigation using calabashes, which is, after the first station of Nyabinghi was water, to use water to irrigate some of the things that other parts of Africa don't do, but which was really the canal system and the irrigation, which is still the farming method that they use in Uganda and Tanzania. This was the system that Nyabinghi introduced.
All right. Here in Jamaica, and I mentioned this before, Nyabinghi has come to mean death to black and white oppressors. And I want to talk about that aspect of Nyabinghi a bit, because I think this is where we get into the resistance to colonialism. So we're talking about Nyabinghi as a resistance movement, but also as a provider, as a unifier, as a mother, as a grandmother. So a complex figure is this woman, Empress Nyabinghi, Queen Nyabinghi, the goddess Nyabinghi. But there's also that aspect of her, which in the literature we talk about the avenger, the one who will not take from any other race oppression. Talk to us about how that manifested. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, what I'm saying is, if you look at the nature of African resistance now, it is pathetic. We have been totally, we come from this great tradition of men and women who have given us almost every blueprint that we need to be free, but we are not. And the reason is, if you are talking about Nyabinghi as this liberator, death to our enemies, yes, but how are you going to kill the enemy? Even if you are going to kill the enemy, you are not just going to kill them with, with words. You can shout death to your enemies, down with oppression, but it won't come down. Somebody has to bring it down. And that person who brings it down must be the system that brings it down. That system can be an economic system. That system can be, a political system, but it will need an economic arm. Most of African, Pan-Africanists and most of, African organizations like Nyabinghi, like the 12 tribes, Pan-African movements all over the world, they lack the economic arm. They lack land for a start. Most of these liberators don't even want land. Which land is what Nyabinghi was about. It was about bringing a lot of land under your influence.
And this is
about economic system.
I think this is a brilliant point that you're making, that ancient Nyabinghi, Nyabinghi herself, that was about land, was about bringing a lot of land under her system and under her control. Now, this is very important, because you're pointing us now to the economics of liberation, the economics of resistance, and the importance of land to the Nyabinghi movement, to the Nyabinghi culture, to Nyabinghi worship.
If you are an organization and you have no land, you don't exist. That's simple. You have no land, no liberation. No land. All liberations are based on land. All revolutions are based on land. All philosophies are based on land. If you have a philosophy, that philosophy must take hold on the land. You must go to a certain address in a certain village, in a certain county, in a certain empire, and say, this is the philosophy of this particular land that people use to exist. Survival is based on land, and that is the thing. Even here, the followers of Nyabinghi, even those now who demonize Nyabinghi as, being anti-Christian, because Christianity has taken a hold here, they still follow what Nyabinghi introduced. Everybody, even if you go and study and live in the city, you must go to your home village, you must have some land, you must grow food there, you must put a small farm with cows, you must store some grain, have a granary. If you have no land, as a man here, or as a man, and you have a family, and you sit among other men, nobody will respect you. Whatever you say, nobody will listen. They will look at you and say, how can you speak? You have no land. You have not done anything where you are born. You are the missing link. You are the weakest link because you inherited all this from your parents, and then you cut it off and you run away. So the economic system that Nyabinghi introduced was food that you can carry. For example, in one part of the world, she introduced alcohol that is carried in a powder form. The people still have it up to today. Grain that can store for 20 years. So if you have to fight the war, you need to feed your soldiers. You need to feed the people. Even if you are fighting like you are fighting at IRFM, at the end of the day, you have to eat. So who is going to provide that food? So even if you are launching a propaganda war, you still need an economic system. And you still need to act existing knowledge. Like if you find people who are making, who are growing mangoes, so what do you do to the mango? You don't sit down and let the mango, fall down and rot. That's what the system that they left behind. Somebody bought that mango and put it in a tree, and it had, it had a fruit. So your job now is to get this fruit and turn it into wine, and turn it into juice, and turn it into a food, and turn it into jam, so that when other people are struggling in another part of the world for your own liberation, they have food to eat that comes from Jamaica or that comes from Uganda.
My brother, Dr. Nkuba, please hold the line. Do not go. We have to take a quick break. You are motivating us. You are reminding us to remember, to rememory, to go back in search of Nyabinghi or Nyabinghi in terms of economic, the resistance, the spirituality, all aspects, as complex as they may appear, of Nyabinghi points to land as being very important. We take a quick break. We'll be right back. Africa Forum, Running African. We're live to Uganda, where we're speaking with Dr. Kihu Nkuba. Dr. Nkuba himself, a historian, a Pan-African, and also a media mogul in Uganda, as a matter of fact, in the Great Lakes region of the continent of Africa, where he owns and operates TV Africa, which is seen all across that region. He's talking from experience, understanding who Nyabinghi, as we call her here in Jamaica, was, and what it means to be Nyabinghi. My brother, welcome back. In the next 20 minutes, which is what we have left, I want to talk a little bit now about understanding then, we understand the concept of economics, of land ownership, of also resistance when we're talking about Nyabinghi. We said earlier that we see a manifestation here in Jamaica of Nyabinghi. How important is it to return to the source, to understand the name Nyabinghi, to understand the concept, to understand the complexity of this woman whose name we revere, whose name we chant, whose name we call almost every day here in Jamaica? How important is it to return to the source, to understand?
It is very important because, religion is the depreciation of the people's culture. Every religion, if I take an example, a very quick example of Islam, for example, the Prophet Muhammad was running his wife was running the hotel, his wife Khadija. She was running a hotel in the desert. If you run a hotel in the desert, who is going to come to sleep there? Maybe a camel caravan once in every 3 months. Once the religion says every Muslim must visit Mecca once in their lifetime, then many people will be coming to visit Mecca, and those many people will stay in a hotel. So religion must carry, or a belief system must carry within it, aims of your own economic emancipation. So in the case of Nyabinghi, for example, every home that had Nyabinghi or recognized Nyabinghi had a shrine. On this shrine, you kept 13 different types of food that you grow yourself. Nyabinghi would not eat food that is second hand. That is a belief system. You couldn't go to your neighbor and say, give me food so that I can put it on my shrine of Nyabinghi. That could not happen. You have to grow it yourself. Because Nyabinghi would be looking at you and saying, I gave you all this knowledge about growing food, so what have you done with it? So it is really, really important to resist Nyabinghi. And look at the history of Nyabinghi and what people were able to accomplish at that period of time. At a time when there was no internet, when there were no phones, when there were no planes, at a time when there were no video, no documentaries, you couldn't go and say, okay, this is what this part of Nyabinghi kingdom has done, let us replicate it here. But what about us? We have to understand that most of our ancestors who didn't have what we have now outfought, outgeneraled some of the best military brains that Europe ever presented. If they were able to do this, what about us? Think of Chetwayo Kampande Zulu. Think of Ras Makonnen, Ras Murgeta. Think of Yaa Asantewa. Think of all these people in that time and at this time who are able to fight without the knowledge that we have, without knowing about Ra, without knowing about the mystery system of learning, without knowing about 10 principles of spiritual growth, without, hearing a professor like you have, who has written about the art of leadership, Oba Tisaka. These were men and women that were brought up without what we have, but they outfought, outgeneraled, outmaneuvered some of the best military brains from Assyria, from Europe, and from other parts of the world. They were able to build empires. They were able to set up economic systems that we still speak about and still practice today. So, what are we then? What kind of men and what kind of women are we if we can't pick on this example and say, you did that then, let us show you. We talk about pyramids. You built the pyramid 48 stories high until 1936, the tallest building in the world. But they didn't have a crane. They couldn't go on the internet and read about how a pyramid is put together. So we must be putting together civilization that make us description. Because we've had... And then what has happened is, you find, for example, in this case, if we take an example of an organization like Nyabinghi, yes, you know that this is an organization that its root is in East Africa, and you haven't even traveled to East Africa to inquire, to say, how was it done? Because every step backward, if you are going to jump a lake or two, if you have seen people who jump distances, Jamaica has very good athletes, they go behind. And then from behind they develop a momentum, and then they come and leap great distances. So this is what we need to do. We need to look at what it is that enabled these people, what united them, what inspired them, and what did they leave for us. Because, there's nothing new under the sun, except that it has been forgotten. The blueprint, the design was already done. All we have to do is interpret it. And this design is land-based. Forget it if you're talking about reparation and you have no land. And there is still land in Africa. Even in this part of the world, I'm speaking to you now right from the foothills of the mountains of the moon. You could still get an acre of land for something like $200. But the Chinese are coming for this land. The Indians are coming for this land. So don't come after 20 years and start complaining. Why did you let the Chinese in? The Chinese came in because you, the guardian, is not there. Although Nyabinghi left you a blueprint for the art of warfare.
My brother, You are challenging us, and you have laid down that challenge, even for those of us who call ourselves Pan-Africanists, but even for the wider African community, African-centered, knowing our being African conscious or not. You're pointing us back and forward at the same time. I want to shift gears just a little in the last few minutes that we have, because one of the issues, and I would be remiss not to talk about this. Here we're talking about ancient Nyabinghi, talking about the Nyabinghi movement, the organization that remains, even though it was driven on the ground by the British, and at one point so many Nyabinghis were actually killed in Uganda and driven on the ground by the British as they fought against a movement, an organization, a belief, a faith that would not stand up to, that would not allow oppression. I want to talk about woman and Nyabinghi.
Yes.
As Nyabinghi is carried to Jamaica, there seems to be, interestingly, and I know that I'm going to get some backlash from this, but a kind of oppression of women within the Nyabinghi movement here in Jamaica. And I want to talk about that, because it seems that there is a disconnect between Nyabinghi and woman. So let's talk, Nyabinghi being a woman herself, the movement, the manifestation here in Jamaica, led mainly by men, and I remember myself going into a Nyabinghi, which was the event itself now, and was chanted out literally, called a Jezebel and so on, from out of the tabernacle. Talk to us about that. Woman in Nyabinghi. It sounds like a contradiction of sort, but let's talk about that. Priests and priestesses.
Well. Sister, I'm going to talk about it, but before I answer, you have to promise me that you will give me another opportunity to talk particularly about that chapter, because I lived in England and I was involved with black organizations, and I saw the total disconnect between men and women. You know, the division that exists amongst black people now, especially those who call themselves educated, is the position of woman. Which in Africa, if you are a woman, if a man went to marry a woman, the man had to prove one that is a man and one that is a wealthy man, and that he has made enough wealth and can afford even to give some. I'm talking about bride wealth. You would go and say, I come as a supplicant to this home to take your pain and make it mine, to be a servant, if I will, if only you give me the hand of this woman in marriage. So in Africa, a woman, the womb of the man, was recognized as the most powerful symbol of African family. The women really ran the family because these were matriarchal systems. So most of the history, if a woman says, if women go together and say, this person can't be a king, he would not be a king. If they said, we have to move from this area to that area and locate the head of this kingdom, that would happen. So there would be nothing. Nyabinghi was a woman. Most of the people that fought with her were women. Most of the ideas that were introduced and carried and managed and superintended by women. It was one kingdom, the eternal kingdom of Mhwezu, where they fought the battle of Rukubanchende that lasted over 13 years, where men refused Nyabinghi. But they refused her not because she was a woman, they refused her because they thought she was such a warrior and she was spreading a lot of war, and they didn't want to subordinate themselves under her. You know, but there is no doubt whatsoever that in ancient times, the rule in Africa was matriarchal system, and the women really had most of the decision, and they put the onus on men. Number one, that you are a provider. Number two, that you are a protector. And number three is that you are a welfare provider. If you have no wealth, up to now in Africa, no wealth for a woman, no wealth, no marriage. There is no love. The I love you marriage is a Western invention. You can't go and say, I'm going to marry you because I love you. You know, when you give birth to children, you are not going to say, oh, you know, I love my children. The children will want food, the children will want clothes, the children will want protection, and the children will want land. They will want to inherit something from their father. You know, so this this is why, if you went back to look at Nyabinghi and look at how people received Nyabinghi, there was never a conflict here in this region where people said they received Nyabinghi because it was the women. No, that didn't happen. That is not in the history, that is not in the record.
And I promise you that I will, as you asked and as you suggested, and I'm waiting on your book also, invite you back to talk about this chapter in your book, Nyabinghi and Woman. And I also want, as finally, Dr. Nkuba, to look quickly at the drum in Nyabinghi. Obviously, I think this does have some kind of a connection right back with the continent of Africa, right back to the Great Lakes region with Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Sudan, and so on, Tanzania. Talk to us about that. Where did how important is the drum? What is a drum in Nyabinghi that it has traveled and carried all the way here in our genetic memory, but practically so here as part of Nyabinghi in Jamaica?
Indeed, one of the ways I am able to piece together the story of Nyabinghi is because of the epic songs that are told in this region on Nyabinghi through the drum. We have a song that lasts 7 hours and that talks mainly about some of the things that Nyabinghi introduced and some of the things that took place at that time. Every woman who is above the age of 70 will know the lines and the stanzas of this epic song, and it goes like this. Let me just give you a small sample. Corazu bezayanga hoizongre kasam corazu bezayanga hoizongre kasam eva kasa komkwato hoizongre kasam kabozo zikwatirire hoizongre kasam porambora rugandira hoizongre kasam porambora nugomajingo hoizongre kasam gomajingo mbajirenta yo kasam mbajirenta mnyano wande hoizongre kasam kabukomani Nyabinghi hoizongre kasam Agadi nimbarajiga hoizongere kasam rebo wanje kurandera yongere kasam nzogera tinju kwimire hoizongere kasam tandiri tire riyomba yongere kasam riyomba batabire hoizongere kasam no wabozo bikwatirire hoizongere kasam, and it goes on and on and on and on for 7 hours, and the drum is beating as the women are moving in tandem with the drum. And most of the songs, when you see sisters above the age of 70 or 80, because those are the people that had that collective memory, those that go to school now, to European education institutions, they don't know these systems. They don't know this. The drum was important. It was a way of putting these stories together, so that they are preserved, so that I'm able to sit here at the foothills of the mountains of the moon and, tell this story to the people of Jamaica. How is my singing?
Wow, brilliant. I was here dancing to the rhythm. It's Nyabinghi. Really love it. Yes, thank you for that.
Sister, yes.
Yes, and well, we're going to talk many more times, and I know I said finally before, but also the importance of fire in Nyabinghi, and we'll come back to, when we talk next time, we'll come back to a sacred drum and the preservation of a sacred drum.
Fire.
Fire.
In Africa, even Nyabinghi, fire is from the time of Homo erectus. When Homo erectus discovered fire, he's afraid that the fire will disappear, so he made sure that fire remains in every home up to now. Like now, I'm speaking to you from the village where I was born, but every home keeps a fire. That fire has to be kept and preserved in a home. You don't get to buy boxes of matches. The fire is there. It is eternal. And the fireplace, was really not only a university, it was also a courtyard where people start to solve disputes. The grandfather is the head of the Supreme Court. And every evening, whatever dispute arises is sorted there by the fire. So it was both a classroom, and a judicial system.
Wow, wow. Interesting how we have preserved the rituals and the traditions of one of the most ancient regions on earth, Uganda, and how this is done through the Nyabinghi here in Jamaica. And also not just through the Nyabinghi, because some of what you've spoken about and even the song you sung is a song that we heard growing up in the foothills of the mountains, in the caves, near the caves in St. Mary. Yes, where the water was so high and so deep that you couldn't see the bottom of it. And we're saying that to say that our people who came from Africa, whether they came in on the ships as enslaved Africans, or they came in long before Columbus, and I feel that a lot of our ancestors were here long before Columbus and were never enslaved, that they maintained elements and aspects and preserved so much of our culture from the heart of Africa, from the beginning of civilization, the place where it all started, that region that stretched from Uganda all the way back to Kemet. Thank you so much, my brother. We are coming to Uganda. We're going to be there. We're in search. Yes, we're in search of Nyabinghi.
Here, and you'll be surprised and amazed at what you see and what you discover. I mean, how can Africa be your mother and you live away from the mother and you ignore that mother and start reading about your mother from second-hand and third-hand information about people who don't wish your mother well, who have attempted to kill your mother and who killed all your relatives and even stripped you from your mother. Once the door of slavery was kicked open, then we expected all the enslaved to run back home to Africa, not to stay, grumbling and quarreling in the little island of Jamaica.
My brother, thank you so much. You have renewed my spirit and my energies this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you. I wish you blessings without numbers and many good things without end.
Nyabinghi of my father be with you.
Yes, sister, yes.
Of man among a community of supernatural authorities who exercise their influence in a fickle and autocratic manner. A special forte is to oppose usurpers and misusers of authority. Who's Nyabinghi? Nyabinghi is an agent of political liberation. So we invite the spirit of Nyabinghi. She's a people's champion in a history of troubled times. Nyabinghi. Primarily a vehicle through which supplicants oppose an established order. Nyabinghi. Nyabinghi reminds people of their community through common spiritual or social objectives that even while it unites and is cohesive, Nyabinghi is a liberator and the focus of a long-standing tradition of social unrest. Who is Nyabinghi? We invoke the spirit of Nyabinghi into this space. Nyabinghi of my father be with you. You've come by way of Ndura and of course Nduga. We can't afford to forget. We can't afford to become complacent. Understanding. Nyabinghi is a perpetual counterculture within a less than perfect society. Nyabinghi is a liberator. Nana, one of our Queen Mothers, Nana Esaboa, who put in my hand almost a year ago. Sister Minnie put this book in my hand. She says, read it. It's called Nyabinghi, the Social History of an African Divinity. And I completed the book just this week. Yes, nothing before the time. So we completed this book just this week. And I've read many more since then. Yes. On Nyabinghi, the ancient goddess. Finding myself in the middle of it all. So we're going to Uganda in search of Nyabinghi, in search of who we were, in search of who we are. Listen up, top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, cash pot, early bird draws are coming up at 8:30. Do you understand why we can't leave the issue of pinnacle hanging? Nyabinghi, do you understand why you can't leave the issue of pinnacle hanging? Do you understand that Nyabinghi is a uniting force? Do you understand that Queen Nyabinghi was a unifier? Do you understand that now? bringing everybody under one roof? Do you understand why we can't leave Pinnacle hanging? Why we can't leave Coral Gardens hanging? Why we can't talk about squatting? Do you understand? Because Nyabinghi is about land and return to Pinnacle. Nyabinghi women, what's your name? Identify yourself. Bring unity to the thing. And return to Pinnacle. The early bird 8:30 top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, and cash pot draws. Congratulations to all of you on it. Wow. You know, Muta said to me as we were leaving from the beach where the movie was being shown that, you know, what's interesting about life and death is that it seems to be even more relevant today than it was back then, because it seems as if it's talking directly to now. It's talking about the issues we're facing with the IMF, with the issues we're facing with privatization, the land grab situation, so many of the issues that came up in that movie, prophetic in a way to life and death. So thank you very much, Stephanie Black, for doing that at the end of the movie, of a documentary. Stephanie Black actually answered question, and an interesting question that she was asked is, how does she get such frank interviews from the IMF representatives? And she pointed out that they had asked her the questions up front, and then she was not necessarily confrontational, that she asked the questions and that they answered. But she also pointed to the extent to which she was being monitored when she was asking those questions, that, you know, that behind a glass cage. It reminded me when she was describing it of when you're going through Miami Customs and you know that everybody watching you through the glass, you just not see them. So, she said it was a situation like that where she was doing the interview, but behind a glass case, building situation. She was being monitored, and the interview was being monitored. She did her interview and was out of there. But great work, Stephanie, there on life and death. But it really was an interesting weekend out in Portland, my favorite parish of all in Jamaica. All right, so the film festival, I think it wraps up today at Great Hearts. Really a rustic place, just as you heard, very rustic, very rugged and nice. I stayed in the Queen of Sheba hut. It was an experience. It was an experience, really, really something else, out of this world. All right, but good stay, enjoyed it. Sorry we couldn't stay longer, but had to come back for work. But the film festival continues in Portland. I think it wraps up today, actually, that people are heading out today. We're standing by for the news, which is coming up in just a few seconds. The local and international headlines. And right after that, IRFM's Sunday Sports Diary. But once again, thanks to the folks at Great Huts in Portland. Thank you so much. With Cinema Paradise at Great Huts, it ran from the August 27, going to be wrapping up today. And some of the films that they showed there: Smile Orange, One People, One Love, Harder They Come, Life and Death, Sankofa, Better Must Come, Get a Life, Ching Pao, Ring the Alarm, are some of the films.
This is news from Irie FM, Jamaica's non-aligned news voice.
Good morning. I am Primrose Oliver with the local and international headlines. 2 women are dead and 8 persons injured following a motor vehicle accident along the Duns River Main Road near Oteria, St. Anne last evening. Dead are 37-year-old Latoya Davis of Chalky Hill, St. Anne, and Marsha Ferguson of Fraser Wood in St. Mary. The accident reportedly occurred in the vicinity of Pearly Beach. Reported that about 6:15 p.m., a Mitsubishi Evolution with 4 passengers aboard was traveling from Marmy Bay towards Ocherias. Upon reaching the vicinity of Roaring River, the driver reportedly lost control of the vehicle, which slammed into a Toyota Corolla station wagon motorcar, which operated as a taxi. A female occupant of the taxi reportedly died on the spot. The drivers of both cars, who were said to be pinned down for up to an hour, had to be cut from the vehicles. The injured persons were hospitalized, while Davis and Ferguson were pronounced dead. A 34-year-old St. Anne taxi operator died in hospital yesterday after he was shot and killed by gunmen during an alleged robbery in Eltham district in the parish the same day. Dead is Richard Sewell of Eltham in the parish. Report from the St. Anne's Bay Police said that about 2:40 a.m. Sewell was among a group of patrons at a shop when 3 armed men approached and proceeded to rob them of cash along with other personal items. Sewell, who allegedly attempted to escape, was shot several times. The police were alerted and he was taken to hospital where he was admitted in serious condition. The men reportedly escaped into neighboring communities. Sewell later succumbed to his injuries about noon yesterday. The Tax Administration of Jamaica, TAJ, is reminding owners and operators of businesses that they are required by law to pay the minimum business tax of $60,000 per annum on their operations. The reminder comes as the TAJ moves to significantly reduce the high level of non-compliance among the 62,000 companies on file. Speaking at a special taxation forum held recently in Kingston, TAJ technical specialist Monica Walker said based on the agency's records, only about 6,000 of the entities file annual statutory returns. State Minister in the Ministry of Transport and Works, Richard Zan, is urging motorists using the north-south link of Highway 2000 linking St. Anne and St. Catherine to ensure that their vehicles are roadworthy. Mr. Zan's suggestions come against recent complaints by motorists who use the thoroughfare that their vehicles rather develop mechanical problems. Days after the opening of the highway, some motorists were seen attending to their vehicles along the soft shoulder of the highway. The Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, says that the Halfway Tree Transport Centre will be open for the next 24 hours to further accommodate people who wish to pick up their smarter cards in anticipation of tomorrow, September 1. Come Monday, the company puts into force its cashless bus fare collection for concession passengers. JUTC says a distribution centre dedicated solely to supplying students with their smarter cards was added to their regular operations yesterday. The company says its bus lay-by at Spanish Town will be opened today until 10 o'clock tonight, and its East Parade offices in downtown Kingston from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It says students can also apply for their smarter cards today up until 4 p.m. at the Portmore Depot in St. Catherine. And in news overseas, Iraqi forces have reached the besieged town of Amarili in northern Iraq, where thousands have been trapped by Islamic State militants. The apparent breakthrough comes after the U.S. carried out airstrikes overnight on Islamic State ISIS positions near the town. The UK, France, and Australia joined the US in dropping humanitarian aid. 15 Islamic State fighters were said to have been captured. The operation to reach the besieged town began yesterday when an alliance of Iraq government forces, Shia militias, began a two-front attack on the militants. US and Iraqi planes provided air cover. Finally, Iceland has raised its aviation warning level after a fresh eruption from a fissure near the Barabunga volcano. However, Iceland's Met Office described the eruption as a very calm lava one. The warning means planes will be banned from flying within 6,000 feet of the volcano peak. In 2010, another volcano erupted in Iceland, producing ash that disrupted air travel across Europe. Those were the local and international headlines. News next at 11:45. You can go online to rfm.net to view some of the stories. Like us on facebook.com/RFM News. Follow us on Twitter at RFM_news. From the RFM Newsroom, I am Primrose Oliver.
About it. That also helped to bring the international focus on it as well.
As well, yeah. Oh, that's what Miguel spoke about. That's last week. Was it last week?
I'm not sure.
Miguel said he was going to. All right. You know, Robert, do you know Great Huts in Portland?
No, what is that?
You have not been to Great Huts in Portland?
No.
It is what it says it is. Great Huts.
Oh, so
even
like
Tree
a
House,
resort?
as we speak now, probably I shouldn't give away his location, but as we speak now, I think Muta is in the tree house. Muta, if you're in the tree house, dial my phone.
It's like a resort.
Eh? It is right where the Boston Jerk is, right? Right there. Hold on. Right there. You know that there's a road right beside.
On your left. Going.
No, the same place. On the same side. You know, there's a little road. It's not paved or anything. It looks like it goes into a community. Right beside.
Boston Jerk Center.
Yeah, right there. Well, you just drive on that road.
So that means it goes down to the beach?
And you see some bamboo fences. So it looks very ethnic. It goes, there's a cliff there where the huts are perched on the cliff, in the trees and so on.
So interesting.
It is very interesting. It is all natural. It looks very, it is what it says.
It sounds as if you've been there.
I stayed in the Queen of Sheba hut. But you know, at first, honestly, I love the place. I really love it. But then I love it and I want to look at it and take pictures because it have that kind of thing where they put in the magazines and so on.
You're kind of rustic.
Right, yes. Just like we're seeing on the magazines. Looks same way and everything. Really beautiful. That must
so how long ago that has been there?
Apparently from about 2000 or something. Because when I asked Mr. Gordon, he said there were tours there first and then over time them develop until what? But let me say, I have a picture
so
for
it
sure.
sounds like a well-kept secret.
Google Great Huts and look at it. It's just it's a well-kept secret, I think. And it's Muta who told me about it. And told me also about the film festival because they hadn't contacted us early enough about the film festival. So there was a film festival that they had there.
Great Huts Resorts.
Yeah, you see the picture?
Port Antonio.
Look on the click on it, look on the stuff so that you see exactly what I'm talking about. But so it's really beautiful. And it's very rustic. Because I had a little difficulty settling in because I'm afraid of lizard. I never see any though. I didn't see any lizard.
So the cliff goes right over into the sea. So you can sit on the cliff looking over into the sea.
Yes, or you can walk
down
to the sea.
Climb down as well, it seems.
There's stairs that take you down to the sea, and when you get to the sea, the film festival was actually on the beach. The big
So hold on, what I'm seeing here, like you have an upstairs section too.
It's not the one place. Maybe it's just one hut that you're looking at.
Yeah, one hut. Because that's the stairs going up.
That's my hut. That's the one I stayed in. It look like. That's all like my hut.
Wow.
I swear you're looking at the Queen of Sheba hut there.
This looks good.
It is really nice. So you notice you see any windows?
No, I'm not seeing any windows.
You see?
But I'm looking at another picture here now, with a trail leading to the hut, or it looks like it's leading to the hut. And there's a little waterway here, like you have fishes there and so.
Right, yes. But remember, many huts now, not just one and all. Some big huts and them spacious. They're really nice.
Then this one here now looks like a dining room. With
yes, you have that too.
This is real rustic.
Right.
Like they cut the cedar tree and make the table.
Yeah, man. Everything is just natural. Everything is just stone, rock, tree. The huts are incorporate the rocks, the huts and the walls of the huts are the rocks.
All right, so I'm seeing one here now that looks like a lookout point.
I wonder if I don't want the mood right now.
No, this doesn't really look like one that you would live in. It looks like a point where you can stay and look out to sea.
Okay, me never seen that.
Like an Eiffel Tower.
Okay. When I say mood up on the beach, where I stay, I say, I'm not checking it, come up for my place, for my hut.
Wow,
I never get to go mood out still, but
it looks really good from the pictures.
It's really nice. It's really, really, really nice. If you, that means it took me a little time to settle down because I had to make sure that because everything's so rustic and natural and the outside is inside and the inside outside. That I have to make sure I never see no lizard. And that took me a little while, It took me a little while to go through.
You have a hammock and all these things.
Yeah, man.
Yes,
it's really nice.
Wow, look good.
Yeah, it's really nice. So I went to the film festival over there, and I saw Sankofa.
Sankofa? Who's Sankofa?
That's Sankofa, that Muta acting.
Okay.
Yeah, so Muta was there too at the showing of Sankofa. He's Shango.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you never see Shango? You never see Sankofa yet?
No.
You must see it because it have a little love scene to it up.
So it's Muta, the love scene?
Yes, Muta have a girlfriend in a Sankofa. But Sankofa is a really serious movie. It's about slavery, right?
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of it's it hits you emotionally because it's raw and it doesn't gloss over the beatings and the treatment of a plantation, the enslavers, so Sankofa was Life and Death was shown on the same Friday too.
Oh, so you're talking about this weekend? No, we're talking about...
Yeah, man, today's the last day, so you can go on. Yeah, Paul, you can go on. You can go check it out and come back. Really, really nice.
I see you have also a big, like a jacuzzi.
Yeah, well, and the hot them have them something that, Yeah. It's really nice. It's a whole different thing. We haven't seen anything like this in Jamaica. Really nice. Yeah.
A well-kept secret.
And the film festival on the beach was something else. Really. Thank you for doing that, for putting the big screen on the beach and say, they're going on a seaside, go watch this. The only thing I wonder about if there's access, if the local people have access to the beach or if it cut off from them.
Or they have to go through the resort to get to the beach.
I don't know because you probably you have people on the stretch there because you have a jerk thing and so on, so people probably can go down the hill and access the beach just the same. But I wasn't sure of that, and then now I've got to have to deal with that if it's not so.
Yes, yes.
You heard what Owen? Owen Arthur, right? Owen Arthur, the former.
From Barbados,
right? Well, in Barbados they try to do the same thing that they're doing here, which is to block people from the beach. And the people went to the beach and demonstrated. They took to the beach, with them sledgehammers, because they built a wall.
Okay.
Back in the, is it 70s? You don't know about it?
No.
All right, back in the 70s, I think. Can I make you listen to a little calypso? Back in the Mighty Gabby did a song. I don't even know if it's on the scene. Anyway, back in the 70s, I think, or somewhere. When was Owen Arthur president of Barbados? Anyway, so people wanted to they were doing the same thing, blocking off the local people didn't have access to the beach. They built a wall, and the people went there to demonstrate with them sledgehammer and everything. And they said they're not leaving until the Prime Minister come. And they were there for a while, and the Prime Minister did turn up. And guess what he turned up with?
A sledgehammer?
Oh, you know that. You don't lie. You saw it somewhere?
No, just guess. But that's what a good politician would do.
But yes. So he turned up with a sledgehammer and to guess who threw the first blow at the wall?
Him same one.
Oh, sir. Rise him up there. You dead? Alright, so listen to this. Me know someone not supposed to play it, but listen. No, me contextualize it properly.
Send the memo to you.
Remember that I play High Life here, and Calypso is really High Life from Nigeria. I mean, nobody else can play it. Because it is High Life. I'm really playing High Life here.
Okay.
Hear the same thing I play when I play the Nigerian song. I can pull a Nigerian song for you, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's High Life, man.
High Life. All right.
Yes.
So says. So
tell Jack the beach belongs to
we.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting.
Very, very interesting. So, you have anything to say finally before we wrap up this segment?
Well, I want to hurry and get back home now, but I'm going to have to stay here for a while before I go back home, but I'll deal with that.
Why you have to stay here?
Because I have work to do.
I know, man. I know that you're going. Say it to you. You're the best. Really, really, really. I know you have work to do.
Normally I'd be heading back home.
But it's just one,
Just one.
Yeah. We can't even say what he's talking about on the air. We're just going to have to leave it at that. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.
People, you think you really know Jack Mackerel, but this Jack is the king of the pack. Jack Mackerel from Grace. Better value, better taste. Take home a can today.
The time is
9:20, and of course that's a different Jack. 20 minutes now after 9 o'clock here inside of the Africa Forum, Running African. And we did promise you that we'll be playing for you now a speech, the address delivered by Professor Hilary Beckles, Chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, House of Commons, Parliament of Great Britain, on Thursday, July 16, 2014. So we're going to take that to you right now, thanks to Professor Vereen Shepherd of Talking History Nationwide Radio, who made this available. Thanks, Prof.
Madam Chair, the distinguished Member of Parliament for Hackney North and Stoke Newton, Diane Abbott. other distinguished members of the House of Lords and House of Commons, excellencies of the diplomatic corps, colleagues at the head table, ladies and gentlemen. I speak this evening in this honorable chamber of the House of Commons as chairman of the Caribbean Commission on Reparations. My colleagues of the Commission are tasked with the preparation and presentation of the evidentiary basis for a contemporary truth that the government of Great Britain and other European states that were the beneficiaries of the enrichment from the enslavement of African peoples, the genocide of indigenous communities, and the deceptive breach of contract and trust in respect of Indians and other Asians brought to the plantations under indenture, have a legal case to answer in respect of reparatory justice. The case of genocide in the Caribbean is well known, but it is not only in respect of our decimated native communities. It is also important to recognize the genocidal aspects of African chattel slavery in the Caribbean. British slave ships brought 5.5 million enslaved Africans into their Caribbean colonies over a period of 180 years. When British slavery was abolished in 1838, there were just 800,000 persons remaining. That is, a retention or survival rate of just 15%. The regime of African enslavement was crafted by policies and attitudes that were clearly genocidal. Jamaica, for example, received 1.5 million Africans. At emancipation, just 300,000 remained. That is 20%. Barbados received 600,000 enslaved Africans. Only 83,000 remain at emancipation. That is 14%. Enslavement and genocide are therefore linked in respect of the African experience in the Caribbean. This case for reparatory justice is for the CARICOM governments to present on behalf of its citizens. I am quite sure, Madam Chair, that when their presentation is made, they will take into consideration the principles of diplomacy and development cooperation for which they have long distinguished themselves. This process of seeking reparatory justice will bring honor and dignity to the people of the Caribbean as well as to the people of Great Britain and Europe. CARICOM governments, like the government of Great Britain, represent nations that are independent and equal. As such, they should proceed on the basis of their legitimate equality without fear of retribution in the best interests of humanity and for a better future for us all. I am honored to be asked to speak in this historic Parliament of the people of Great Britain, and for this I thank our distinguished chair, honorable member of this House, Diane Abbott. Like all of you gathered here this evening, I am aware that this Parliament prepared the official political basis of the crimes that defined the colonial past. It is here, in this House, that the evil system of slavery and genocide were established. This House passed laws, framed fiscal policies, and enforced the crimes that have produced harmful legacies and persistent suffering now in need of repair. This House also made emancipation from slavery and independence from colonialism an empowering reality. It is in this House, therefore, we can now imagine that laws for reparatory justice can be conceptualized and implemented. It is in here, in this House of Commons, we believe that the terrible wrongs of the past can be corrected and humanity finally and truthfully liberated from the shame and guilt that have followed these historic crimes. We must believe, Madam Chair, in the corrective power of this Parliament to respond positively to this present challenge, and in the process, free itself from the bondage of its own sins and crimes. Without this belief, our journey here this evening would be lacking integrity and without a doubt a useless exercise. But I speak in this honorable house this evening not only as chairman of a rightfully constituted commission that is peopled by some of our finest Caribbean citizens who have been selected by our distinguished presidents and prime ministers, but as a Caribbean person with an affinity for this country. I was raised and educated in Great Britain. I came from the Caribbean to this country as a child. I grew to maturity here and was educated here in a fine university that has distinguished itself within the liberal progressive pedagogy of this nation. Great Britain, therefore, is my second home, and I care for it as I care for my first home, the Great Caribbean. I wish for Great Britain, as I do for the Great Caribbean, peace and prosperity. I wish that their shared past, painful though it has been, will be transformed into a moral force of mutual respect and development cooperation. It is for these reasons, Madam Chair, that I have joined the Caribbean and global movement for reparatory justice. I believe we can settle this case within the context of diplomatic initiatives that are consistent with our status as equal nations. The crimes committed against the indigenous peoples, against the enslaved Africans, and the Asian people on the indenture are well documented. We know of the 250 years of slave trading, chattel slavery, and the following 100 years of colonial oppression. Slavery was ended in 1838, but only to be replaced by a century of racial apartheid, including the denigration of our Asian community. Indigenous genocide, African chattel slavery and genocide, and Asian contract slavery were three acts of a single play, a single process by which the British state forcefully extracted wealth from the Caribbean, resulting in its persistent endemic poverty. I wish to commend, as a result, on the 1833 Act of Emancipation and how this august Parliament betrayed the enslaved people of the Caribbean by forcing them to pay more than 50% of the cost of their own emancipation. This is an aspect of our history long hidden from public view. We know, for example, Madam Chair, that this Parliament in 1833 determined that the 800,000 enslaved people in the Caribbean were worth as chattel property £47 million. This was their assessed market value. We know that this Parliament determined that all slave owners should receive just and fair compensation for the official taking away of their human property. We know that this Parliament provided the sum of £20 million in grants to the slave owners as fair compensation for the loss of their chattel. And we know that this Parliament also determined that the enslaved African people would receive none of this compensation. The argument made in this House was that property cannot receive property compensation. This Parliament, in its Emancipation Act, therefore upheld the law that black people were not human but property. What this Parliament has hid from the world is that it also determined that the remaining £27 million would be paid by the enslaved people to their enslavers by means of a 4-year period of free labor called the apprenticeship. This period of additional free labor by the emancipated represented the enforced extraction of £27 million by the state from the black community of the Caribbean. It was a cruel and shameful method of legislating emancipation by forcing the enslaved to pay more than 50% of the financial costs of their own freedom. The £20 million paid the enslavers by this parliament was less than the £27 million paid by the enslaved African people to their enslavers as dictated by this parliament. I wish now to engage the argument of the British government that the slavery and other crimes were legal and that they took place a long time ago and are beyond the borders of adjudication. Allow me, Madam Chair, to breach protocol and to inject myself into the discourse in order to demonstrate how very contemporary and how very current this exploitation of the Caribbean people is and has been. Upstairs this chamber sits the Earl of Harewood. He is an honorable member of the House of Lords. But does Lord Harewood know that my grandfather, after independence in Barbados in 1966, labored on his family's sugar plantations, as did his father and forefathers going back to the days of slavery? Does the goodly Lord know that as a child, I took lunch for my grandfather into the cane fields of their sugar plantations? Lord Harewood, who I have had the pleasure of meeting and dining, go back a long way. My family has been a part of his family from slavery into the present. Take also the very aristocratic and very distinguished Cumberbatch family. This family has now produced the brilliant young actor Benedict Cumberbatch, who I would love to meet one day. Benedict's grandfather owned the estate on which my beloved great-grandmother worked all of her adult life. They enslaved my family on their Cleland plantation in the parish of St. Andrew in Barbados. My great-grandmother, who helped to raise me, and who was also called Mammy, also carried the name Adriana Cumberbatch. The actor and the academic are joined therefore by a common past and present, and maybe common blood. My own case is but one of 10,000 such cases. Everywhere across the Caribbean, the presence of our enslavers can be identified in our daily domestic lives. This history is not remote. It was not a long time ago. It is alive. It is now. It is today. And it continues to press upon our daily affairs. And what have our governments and people done in respect of this legacy since we have gained national independence? The truth is, Madam Chair, that the people of the Caribbean have been very courageous in their efforts at self-development and self-help in respect of this terrible history and enduring legacy of suffering. Our citizens have faced this past head-on and have established a vibrant culture of community self-help and sustainable regional development mobilization. We are not beggars. We are not subservient. We do not wish charity and handouts. We want justice. We wish reparatory justice. When all is said and done, our governments these past 50 years have been cleaning up the mess left behind by Britain's colonial legacy. Our very finest presidents and prime ministers have been devising strategies and projects to clean up the awful mess inherited from slavery and colonization. They must be commended for this grand effort. But the fact is, this legacy of rubble and ruin, persistent poverty and suffering, and racialized relations and reasoning that continues to cripple our best efforts has been daunting. Britain and its parliament cannot morally and legally turn their back upon this past and walk away from the mess they have left behind. This parliament has to return to the scene of its crimes and participate as a legitimate parliament, as a legal and moral parliament in the healing and rehabilitation of the Caribbean. We cannot and should not be asked to do this by ourselves. We have done our part. This parliament must now return and do its part within the context of reparatory justice and within the framework of development cooperation. I wish to give two examples of how this reparatory justice can work. Jamaica, for example, Britain's largest slave colony, was left with 80% black functional illiteracy at independence in 1962. From 1655 to 1962, Great Britain managed the Jamaican economy. 80% black functional illiteracy was the basis on which Jamaica sought to build an independent nation. From this circumstance, the great and courageous Jamaican people have built a nation, but they have struggled with development and poverty alleviation. The deep crisis remains. This parliament owes the people of Jamaica an educational and human resource investment initiative. Barbados, Britain's first slave society, is now called the amputation capital of the world. It is here that the stress profile of slavery and racial apartheid, dietary disaster and psychological trauma, and the addiction to the consumption of sugar and salt have reached the highest peak. The country is now host to the world's most virulent diabetes and hypertension epidemic. This parliament owes the people of Barbados an education and health initiative. It is the same for all of our countries. The islands in the north, Turks and Caicos, through to the Bahamas, the Leewards and Windwards, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize and beyond. The CARICOM 10-point reparatory justice program addresses these development issues that are central to the case that Great Britain has to answer. It is an invitation to Great Britain to demonstrate leadership within the legal, moral, and diplomatic culture of the world, within the Commonwealth, and within its relations to the Caribbean. There can be no escaping the importance of this exchange of views about the matter before this honorable chamber tonight. It took all of the 19th century to uproot slavery from the Caribbean, from Haiti in 1804 to the Spanish sub-region in the 1880s. It took another 100 years to create citizenship, nationhood, and democracy across the Caribbean as a development framework. We have helped ourselves. This 21st century will be the century of global reparatory justice. Citizens are now, for the first time since they were driven into retreat by the colonial authority of Great Britain, able to stand up for reparatory justice without fear. Their claim, this just claim for reparations, will not go away. Rather, like the waves upon our beautiful shores, they will keep coming and coming until reparatory justice is attained. Madam Chair, we call upon you and all distinguished members of this House to rise to this challenge and to assist Great Britain to be truly worthy of the title great. I urge you to do the right thing in the right way. There is no other right time other than right now in our time. There is so much to gain from your leadership. The Caribbean is counting on you. In 1823, the distinguished and honorable Thomas Buxton MP for Weymouth and Welcome Regis presented a bill to this House calling for an Emancipation Act with compensation for the enslaved people of the Caribbean. His bill and vision were defeated. Instead, 10 years later, an emancipation bill was passed by this House, not with compensation for the enslaved as imagined by Buxton, but with handsome and generous compensation for the enslavers. That year, some 40% of the national expenditure of this country was handed over to the slave owners as reparations. The enslaved people of the Caribbean received nothing. Indeed, they were then called upon by this very Emancipation Act to give £27 million in free labor to their enslavers. The injustice and the cruelty of that Emancipation Act remain today like a fishbone stuck in our throats. We urge you, Madam Chair, and other members of this Parliament to rise up and bring the Buxton vision to life. He was a noble warrior for reparatory justice. His spirit can return to this House in both places, and the 21st century will be ours to forge a new moral order for our collective well-being. On behalf of the Caribbean Reparations Commission, all of my colleagues across the Caribbean who have worked hard with our governments in order to bring this case before you, I ask that when you receive this invitation, you do so with humility and openness. We also urge that you receive this invitation in the spirit of the 21st century, a century committed to reparatory justice. May the values and the spirit of development cooperation and mutual respect guide us all. Thank you, Madam.
Another time, I'll be laying out my research, the one-year process, investigative process, all the letters that I've written, because I have all of them. I have printed the entire website from which a client list has been removed. My brother, who listens online, has also allowed me to retrieve the client list that was deleted by the administrators of the website to discredit my research. This is a point that I want to make and to leave you with, and that is that my research is solid, the information is solid, and all that I've said have come from them themselves. They can't retract on it. So, just so you know, we know that is not easy to do. Our system is one of detachment. We know that is not easy to do. Our system is one of detachment to keep silenced people from asking questions, to keep the judged from judging, to keep the solitary people from joining together, and the soul from putting together its pieces. Eduardo Galeano said that, and I'm going to repeat that. I understand that our system is one of detachment to keep silenced people from asking questions, to keep the judged from judging, to keep solitary people from joining together, and the soul from putting together its pieces. so that if you feel threatened and feel that you must remove your names from the petition, go right ahead and do so. At the end of the day, this is not about the petition. It is about truth and rights and justice. And we're going to go after that until we have achieved that. Already, I understand, and I've come upon this personally, that there is a plot to discredit my work. I stand by my work. I stand by the petition. I stand by the research.
Yeah, man, this is Clive, a.k.a. Chris Zogo, you know. One, you can give me a minute to make a talk to your listeners, them. Yeah, man, this, I talk to Muta listeners from Jamaica, US, Britain, and the world, you know. Especially the one them that on YouTube and BOBS and Roman channel. You know, for over 20 years, Muta, I highlight problem them and I get solution. But, you know, I see black people, but Muta alone can't do it alone, you know. But all we do, as them listening, we do, we talk and we complain amongst ourselves and pass blame and we the government, white man, rich man, and Jah and Jesus to solve them. Black people, if you know, say, and a responsibility that other people solve them problem, you know. If you know, say, the man we have been put by his neck, now take it off and let you lick it off and pump him in the face and stick in a fin throat. Government is doing good, you know. Because you see them a drive Pajero and the regular artists, them alright, because them don't make it. And you see them a pop champagne, flat BMW, and a be a big mansion, but, you know, them not be no factory for employee, you know. The problem that I face working and poor class don't affect them. I can't believe how fool on be, you know, they're wait for same people who cause the problem to fix it. We complain about foreigner buy up Jamaica, but instead we buy up Jamaica, we buy up foreign goods. You know when a thing said then get the money from. I see your money when you buy them goods then use back and come buy up Jamaica to use against you. We complain about Monsanto, but we shop at the supermarket all the time. And we don't even try to create our own supermarket that we sell our own organic food. So we leave it up to them to solve our problem with them create. Marcus Garvey say, if we can't do what other races do, you know, we don't deserve to die. And that is exactly what happened to it right now. If we can't own the wholesale like the Chinaman, we don't deserve to stay poor and jobless. If we can't own the multinational like the white man, we will stay at the bottom of the political and economic system and big IMF. If we can't own the big farm like Monsanto, we deserve to die from cancer and death of famine. Muta give you no solution to the problem. But Muta, you alone don't have the money to solve a big problem, yeah. So if we put the money together, we can create the big man, big corporation, or big business that will represent our interests and agenda to work to solve our problem. I say, me don't say already, you know, if 1,000 Muta listener put $1,000 US, that's $1 million US, 100 million Jamaica can set a foundation, start a business. We are going to invest in building and expanding black business like farm, supermarket, car creator, transportation, etc., which will provide wealth and jobs amongst our own by ourselves. Talking and complaining is good, you know, because they highlight the problem. But it's time to build business and structure to solve the problem that we complain about so much. Every race have them structure set up. That is why you can see Chinese come from China, set up shop, and start it out with all Chinese need. All of that man know to do is just be a buyer. You can't even blame the Chinese, you know, because they're not doing it for yourself anyways. My solution, I know the be all and all, but it's one thing that is in your power to do and can create a system that will outlast us all alive now, you know. Muta is the only man in Jamaica I feel that is trustworthy. That is why I'm willing to invest $1,000 US in him to set up a business to build our system. There must be at least, you know, 1,000 of him listeners who believe in real self-reliance. If not, I guess that Jamaican is doomed to want to be beggars. $1,000, I don't know, you know, why? But you know, Jamaicans spend more than that on ganja, liquor, bleaching cream, clothes and car and big house, etc. In overconsumption. If you don't have 1,000, then you know what? Can get 10 people to join you as one then. So I want all the serious Muta listeners them to email muta@irafm.net. Call up and tell them say, you're ready to invest in IM to build your phone system. So that me want to tell the people in the Muta.
Blessed man, give thanks. That sounds serious. That sounds very, very serious.